picture the situation in your mind, situation where it's important to communicate something, and not just get it across, but have it stick, so that when you walked out the door, when you were no longer there, that they could remember what you said and act on it. You have a situation in mind? Let me ask, the situation that you're thinking of, when it was. How many of you are thinking of a situation within the last year? Last 6 months? Last 3 months? Last week? Wow, okay. So sometime between 12 times a year and 52 times a year, you're in a situation where it's important for you to get your messages to stick. Now, there are some complications that you're well aware of. Organizational size makes it more difficult for a message to stick. I've talked to CEOs that say, you know, the most powerless I ever felt was when I took that big corner office, because to get a message across about strategy, about what's important to our organization, to 10,000 employees, to 100,000 employees, is incredibly difficult. There are boundaries in organizations that prevent your messages from getting across. The most important boundary is the one outside your organization, between you and the customers that might consume your products or services. But at every level of the organization, when you're trying to put together a project management team, the engineers don't speak the same language as the marketers, and the marketers don't speak the same language as the finance people. And so if we're thinking about getting a message to stick, we have to have messages that are able to cross boundaries. Now, what I want to suggest is that we can think about urban legends as a prototype to understand what makes messages stick. Here are a set of messages that have been successful across time and even across cultures in some cases. And so if we understood what made those messages stick in the marketplace of ideas, then we might be able to take away some hints for ourselves to make our own messages stick. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine, you've heard that opening before, a friend of mine was driving home from a party one night out in the country, and he was driving back to his home in the city. And he's driving along one of those little country roads that you know about, nobody around for miles. But off in the distance at one point, he sees a person walking by the side of the road. And as he comes close and passes the person, he realizes it's a young lady. Now, this is a nice guy, and so he decides that he should pull over and see if anything's wrong, because the next person that might be driving by might not be so nice. And sure enough, he asks the young lady if she needs a ride, and she says yes, climbs in the back of the car, and they go off down the road. Now, he tries to strike up a conversation with her, but she's not talking very much. He can hear her teeth rattling in the back. She seems very cold, so he takes off his sweater and kind of hands it over in the back. A few miles down the road, they've driven a little bit further, she calls out from the back she needs to stop for a moment, and so he pulls over the car, and she gets out and runs out into the forest that's right beside the road. Now, he waits for a few minutes and then starts to get a little worried because she hasn't come back, calls out for her, eventually grabs the flashlight from his car and wanders off into the forest to see if he can find her. Just on the other side of the forest line, there's a cemetery. And so he finds himself wandering around the cemetery late at night. He's a little weirded out by the whole experience. And he keeps calling out, and he is not successful at finding her. So he's worried enough about this at this point that he decides what he should do is drive to the address that she mentioned in the city. It's a house that or at least a street that he knew well. It's close to where he lived. Drive to the house and tell them that he had seen this person and that they might want to check up on him. So he gets to the house in the city, knocks on the door, and an older gentleman opens the door. He says, "Sir, I think I might have met your daughter out on Highway 71. The gentleman says, "No, I'm sure that you didn't." And at that point, he's looking over the guy's shoulder into the entryway of the house, and he sees a picture. And in the picture is the girl that he just encountered on the road. He says, "But that's the girl. The girl in the picture is the one that I met." And he said, "Son, my daughter died on Highway 71 20 years ago."